Thank you everyone for joining me today. I thought it would be a good day to do. Hi, Renee. Good to see you too. Um, all the way from Australia. So, for those of you who haven't been on my Substack Live before, I talk about Australian politics. Um, I'm sorry, American politics, but I'm actually from Australia. I know it seems a bit weird, but you get used to my accent after a while. I thought I would talk today a little bit about the Epstein files to begin with, and basically what I'm sort of seeing at the moment. And look, it's all a little bit weird, like being in Australia and watching the news from Australia. Hi, Penny, good to see you again. Watching the news from Australia of what's happening in America, it's always a little bit strange seeing Donald Trump because hi, Bradley, good to see. Because it's just the way Trump lies about everything. It just seems so obvious, and it's. I know that most Americans don't believe what Donald Trump says, but the fact that there's millions of people who do, it's like really disturbing. like a couple of the big things just in the last 24 hours, right? Now I know he lies. I know he like lies all the time. No worries. I feel like I live on Mars these days. Yeah, Jim. Yeah. I know. I could imagine. Well, Jim, it would be way weirder for you guys because you're actually living in the country. Um, and for us being on another continent, being all the way in Australia, even though, these days people consume news through the internet and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of you're kind of experiencing it quite closely in Australia as well, because if you're on Substack or Twitter or anything like that, you're getting the same sort of news. And if you're like me and you follow American politics closely, you're constantly fed more stuff like that. But it definitely would be harder for Americans. But even the last 24 hours, and I know Trump lies all the time, but I've got to say, the last 24 hours, he tried to take credit for releasing the Epstein files. We all know the only reason he wanted the House of Representatives to release that was because basically the Republican Party, somewhere between 50 and 100 people in the Republican Party, were going to say yes to releasing the Epstein files anyway. So he thought, well, you know what? They're going to do it anyway. So I might as well pretend like I was all for it the whole time. And let's just hope that no one in the last 24 or 48 hours were actually listening to me, basically say that I don't want it to be released. So 24, 48 hours before, he's threatening, right? He's threatening Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all these other Republicans for saying they want to release the files or say yes to the vote. And then 24 hours later, he's going, yeah, it's been done with my approval. I do wonder how many Americans, um, in that point of view, like how do they must know he's lying. I like to think in my own head, I like to think that even the diehard Republicans or MAGA people know that he's lying, but they just love him so much, right? They care. They're so there's so much in the coal that they know he's lying, but they're gonna vote for him anyway. Do you know what I mean? So they don't really care that he's lying. But I just hope they know he's lying, and because I think it's better that they know he's lying, but still going to vote for it. Like they still love him. That if they don't, because if they actually believe him, that's millions and millions of Americans who are driving around with cars, right? Who have access to driver's licenses, and they're like on the roads. Like if I thought millions of Australians thought like that, like we believe, Penny, he's made it so embarrassing to be an American right now. I'm so grateful for you and others around the world because it means everything to us that you all know we're important and horrifies the rest of the world. Yeah, thank you, Penny. Yeah, it's true. And look, I've got to say, I do think like sometimes in America, you probably wonder, do people from Australia or Europe or other countries, do they look at America and think you're all as crazy as each other? And if this was happening in Australia, I'd hate to think, and Trump was an Australian leader, like a prime minister. I'd like to. Hi, Natasha. Good to see you. Hi, Dale. Let's see you. I'd like to think that the rest of the world weren't thinking. well, they're all crazy people. They all love Trump. You know what I mean? So, hi Joe, happy to be here. Thanks, Natasha. It's good to have you back. So, I definitely think in America, you should definitely know that a lot of people in Australia, and also I know people in Europe and the UK and Scotland, all that, they absolutely do have sympathy for Americans who didn't vote for Trump, 100%. And I know, and a lot of us in Australia will say things like, we don't want him, like he's bad for the world, but he's worse for other Americans. So the people who didn't vote for Trump in some ways have it the worst because you have to like live in the United States, So I so it's important that you guys understand that we're not all thinking you're all the same, that you're all Trump supporters or that you're all crazy. As I've said 100 times before, I think only 30% of Americans actually voted for Trump. Um, Jim, I doubt the files will be released. Trump initiated a new investigation, and the information can't be released because of the latest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. I was going to say that, Jim. You're 100% right. This whole thing is like a bit of a setup. First of all, Trump can release it without the House release. I mean, the funniest thing is Trump doesn't need the House to release it. He doesn't need the Senate to release it. He could just release it on his own. So the fact that he's saying for them to release it just shows that he's stalling, and it's either going to be they're doing an investigation, of course, only into the Democrats, of course, and then they're going to say they can't do it, or it goes to the Senate and the Senate kill it, or even if the Senate passes it, right? Even if there's enough Republicans, Trump can also veto it himself. Now, I think um, I, I I think there is a possibility that things get that Trump gets so much pressure on him that he will maybe possibly release it. I don't know. Redact his own name, like redact information about him. The weird thing about this is I'm not even sure that there's information in the Epstein files that that make Trump out to be someone who was sleeping with children. I'm not even sure that's the case. Um, so I think the reason he's doing this, the main reason he's doing this, is he's probably done a lot of embarrassing things with Epstein, and I don't mean necessarily illegal, but he's done embarrassing things with Epstein, like kinky sexual stuff, whatever it is. I think there's a lot that stuff could come out. Secondly, I think one of the other things that a lot of people should know is that it's obvious now that even if Trump didn't participate himself with underage girls, it's obvious now that he knew Epstein was doing it. So by keeping it quiet, in effect, he's being complicit, right? He's being complicit. And there's also this whole thing that um, Trump had all these women like Dufresne, who was working for him, Virginia Dufresne, who was working for him at Mar-a-Lago, and then said that Trump stole the people who used to work with him. But Epstein, I mean, but Epstein didn't have. I don't understand why stole. Like Epstein didn't have a Mar-a-Lago himself, right? Epstein didn't own a massage place. So how is he? What was he stealing them for, right? Because whenever you hear Trump say, "Oh, I had all these staff that were working for me," and then he poached them, and then I think, well, poached them to do what? Like, didn't he? Because he knew Epstein enough, right? He knew Epstein enough to know that Epstein didn't own a massage parlor. Epstein didn't own a resort, right? He didn't own, didn't own hospitality things. He was a finance guy. So why would he take young women who are trained, who are working in massage or hospitality, working as waitresses or whatever? Why is he stealing that? He doesn't have the same type of businesses that Donald Trump does. So at the very least, Donald Trump knew what Epstein was doing, right? I think another big part of it as well, if Trump hasn't actually done anything illegal himself, is that he's also protecting friends of his, rich, powerful friends of his who've actually maybe done illegal things or done embarrassing things. So even if he hasn't done anything himself, right? He's I think what is going to come out now. The only thing to this is in America. Hi Nicole, nice to see you. I see. In America, just because you know someone is doing that, there is no law, right, to prosecute you for knowing that unless you hold a certain position, like you're a doctor, right? So if a doctor finds out a child is being abused, by law, that doctor, right? Hi, Kimmy. That doctor by law has to give that information to the police, right? But Trump and also, I think the school teachers are saying this. So certain positions, there's certain positions where you have to, by mandate, have to give that information to the police if you see child abuse or whatever it is. But Trump, because Trump didn't have one of these positions, he under law, he doesn't have to by law give that information to the police. So he could have known what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with young girls, and he still wouldn't be in trouble. Ethically, obviously, it's wrong. Morally, it's wrong. But legally in America, it's not wrong. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think in Australia, it's different. I think in Australia, if you knew someone was participating in child pornography or pedophilia, I think you have a right to say something unless hi Henry, good to see you. Unless you're, like you're a child or something and or you're being threatened by the perpetrator as well, or you feel scared. Do you know what I mean? You feel like your life is in danger if you give obviously then you don't have to. But generally speaking, unless he was enabling a facility. Yeah, exactly right, Nicole. Yeah, yeah. Unless he was, for example, giving his facility using his facility, or the other thing is he was deliberately giving his staff to Jeffrey Epstein to thing because again I don't understand why Good Samaritan laws might apply to him. Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah, so I did look into it, and I did actually hear a lawyer in America talking about it, and that lawyer said that Trump there would be no legal reason why he would be in trouble if all he did was as long as he wasn't involved, if he only knew about it or had heard about it through second or third parties, that's not enough to prosecute him. So um, which is, again, for me, I feel like the most likely scenario is going to be we're going to find out a lot of weird stuff that Trump has done. And secondly, we're going to find out that he knew a lot more about his Epstein than he was making out. Penny, I honestly don't think he'd protect anyone if it affects his power and ego. He would never take blame or anyone expect other person. Yeah, now, Penny, I agree. I agree with that. But the only thing I would disagree with there is that he might have a connection. So those people might be big donors who pay money to Trump. They might be real estate people. They might be financial people. Now, remember, a lot of the people that Epstein worked with or trafficked were in the finance industry. So they were hedge fund managers. So it could be that these people that Trump is protecting, he's not protecting them because he likes them as people, he wants to protect them, but he's protecting them because they benefit him in some way, right? So they benefit him financially or through, giving money to super PACs or whatever to his government. That's what I think might be the case. But I also think it doesn't have to be just that there's photos and stuff. It doesn't just have to be that he's done something with young girls, right? There could be a whole bunch of other things that Trump could have done outside of pedophilia. I didn't think of those financial interests. Great, yeah, yeah. Um, so another thing is, it doesn't have to be pedophilia. It could be like weird stuff. Like recently, we've been hearing about, Bubba, like give blow Bubba. I don't know if that's true. It could have just. I think it was just a joke. I don't know if that's. I think that was two people joking, but there's no doubt about it that Trump was into some weird stuff, right? We know, I must say, yeah, he was like when his wife was pregnant, he was with a porn star, right? So you know he's been with a lot of women. He had he's had like beauty pageants, his own beauty pageants before. I'm sure Trump has done a lot of stuff that he wouldn't want people to know about, and it wouldn't necessarily be illegal, right? So both those things can be true. Um, the only reason why I think it's unlikely that something illegal that he done is going to come out is because a lot of the women who've already spoken haven't accused him of anything. And I heard an interview with someone who's not a big Trump supporter. She doesn't like there's speculation about money laundering. That's right, Nicole. Exactly. Yeah, money laundering. Exactly. Because a lot of these people um, could incriminate Trump, not in terms of being a pedophile, but financial, right? So there could be people out there that has done money laundering with Trump or has helped Trump financially. Remember, Epstein. What's been released is a lot of the stuff that's been released is Epstein saying that that Trump is one of the dodgiest, most corrupt people that he's ever met, and he was talking about financial, right? So it doesn't. Again, I think a lot of times people are thinking, or we get the property they fell out about. Yeah, exactly, Nicole. A lot of this stuff, I think, to do with Trump is not. We're not. I think the least likely scenario is we're going to find out Trump was with underage girls. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but based on all the information that we know, including people who've actually seen the files and they don't like Trump, it's probably going to be the least likely. But I think the most likely is he's protecting corrupt people that he's done corrupt things with. Secondly, he knew about this stuff that was happening. He was aware of it and he turned a blind eye to it, right? Or he might have even facilitated it or didn't care about it. And thirdly, the people he's protecting could turn on him in terms of business deals that he's done, corrupt business deals that he's done. So that's kind of what I think is going to be the case in the end of the files. I think we're going to find out kinky, weird stuff that he's done, right? And also a lot of fraud. It's odd that the guy that sues everyone for anything has never brought a suit against anyone who have called him a pedophile publicly, including Elon Musk. Yeah, yeah, it is. I know, but the thing is, Jim, if he did that, that would then go to discovery and then that would go to court. And it would, I think the thing about Trump is he does, it's one thing to sue someone. It's one thing to sue someone because they work at a news organization, right? It's another thing to sue someone to say you're a pedophile because the thing about Trump is he doesn't want to talk about this stuff, right? That's the biggest thing you notice. He wants to talk about anything else. If that is true that he wasn't directly committing those crimes, if he helped cover it up, accessory fact, I think it's almost impossible for him to avoid criminal culpability. Yeah. So I think I think I don't think Trump would want to go to court about this stuff, right? Even if he's innocent, because I don't think he wants this conversation to continue. He wants this conversation to end. And going to court about him being a pedophile, even if he's innocent, will mean it will be in the news constantly for the next 3 years. You know what I mean? And I don't think he wants to talk about Epstein. I don't think he wants to talk about this. And that's why I don't think he would sue anyone because of that. Because when he sues people, when he sues news organizations, if you notice, it never actually goes all the way, right? He's suing news organizations because he knows that he has control of the FCC, and he knows that, and basically, and by the way, he only sued news organizations after he won, right? Because he knew he had the power, and he knew that these people were going to capitulate before it went to court. Now, the New York Times, who he said he was going to sue for billions of dollars, refused to capitulate and give him like $15 million to make him go away. And what happened? He dropped the case, right? The BBC, who he threatened, said no, and now he's dropped the case. So I don't think he's going to go. I don't think a lot of these threats that he does with suing people, I don't think he ever intends to go all the way. He wants to intimidate them enough to give him, even because for him, even if they give him $1 million, it's not about the $1 million. It's about the fact that he can say, "Oh, ABC admitted they were wrong, and that's why they gave me money." You know, NBC gave me money. 60 Minutes gave me money. It's more. It's not about the money. It's about saying, "Oh, they've all, they're fake news, and the reason I know they're fake news is because they paid me money." Um, uh, they could have redacted his name by now. In fact, it's likely his administration has already Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Kimmy. I wouldn't be surprised. It's about power and ego. Yeah, I agree, 100%. I think there's definitely things redacted. Again, it might not have anything to do with children. It could just have something to do with either things that are going to get him like business wise, or it could have to do with him being corrupt, or that he knew a lot more than he's made it out to be, right? Um, I think knowing more than it made it out to be is obviously obvious now. We do know now that, we basically know that he's been lying. I mean, first of all, you know, for years, everyone around Trump has been, including all his followers, have been saying that that the reason he's not complicit in this Epstein thing is because it's all about the reason he's not complicit in the Epstein thing is because he got rid of Epstein. He told Epstein to go away because he thought Epstein was a creep. The reality is only a couple of months ago or 3 months ago, Trump was talking about this in the media, and Trump basically said, "Oh, the reason I got rid of Epstein is because he was poaching my staff." But he said nothing about he got rid of Epstein because he thought Epstein was a creep. Everyone else around him has been saying that, but he hasn't been saying that. So, it could also Penny. It could also involve businesses that his children are involved with. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think I think he's protecting rich, powerful people who he has connections with, right? And who have probably done things. So this woman, I can't remember her name, who I heard interviewed, this particular woman, she's a lawyer, and she's actually read a lot of the Epstein files, and she's no fan of Trump. And she admitted that she didn't see anything about Trump himself doing anything like sexual, right? But she did see a whole bunch of other men, somewhere between 15 and 20 men, right, who are business leaders, financial leaders. So most of them in the financial industry. I think there was one TV producer. And basically, she said it looks like there's evidence in the Epstein files to say that these people should have been charged or could be charged with a thing. So I think if the Epstein files get released, we're going to find out that Trump had a very good relationship with these people, and even if he didn't do anything himself, he probably knew that they were doing, and also he probably has a lot of, as I said before, strong business ties with these people. So again, I don't think, again, I think there's a lot of stuff that can be uncovered in there. And I think it doesn't have to be that he was, if at the end of this, we find out there's no evidence that he did anything with the underage girls, that doesn't, that doesn't absolve him, right, of everything else that he's done, which is basically cover up for other people who did bad things, and also business connections, and the fact that, he is a creep. I mean, it might not be illegal, but he is a creep, right? He was found liable of sexual assault. We know that. He has been accused of sexual assault by like 20 or 30 women, even if they're not the women from the Epstein thing. So, and so just because this particular thing might not be it, yeah. So I think, again, I think a lot of the stuff we're going to find out is going to be pretty bad about Trump. It's going to be embarrassing about him. And I think if it is illegal stuff, it could be financial stuff that is illegal. And as Penny said, it could involve his children, because his children are very his children are very sort of, corrupt. Jim, do we think he even knows what is in the files? Who has a chance by delivery or any serious bad news to him? I think he has surrounded himself with sycophants. Only, yeah, the files may be a mystery to him too. Yeah, true, Jim. Yeah, yeah. I, I, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's enough. There's enough people who have seen bits of the file. So we know the women. We know a lot of the women who are in the files. Like we know a lot of the women who made, who are basically talked about this. I think there's about 20 or 30 women who've spoken about what's in the files, right? So, and they have made accusations against people who are in those files who say that they should have been charged with something. So we do know there are people who a lot of the women who are accusing him basically are saying should have been charged with that. So we do know certain information. I don't know if anybody besides the FBI would know everything that's in there. I don't think Trump would know every little thing that's in there. I don't think he would. Although I think he would definitely have instructed Pam Bondi to come back to him, right, and give him like a bullet points of what she found in there, that sort of thing. Because there could be a lot of stuff. I mean, think about all the crazy stuff Trump has done. I'm sure he hasn't remembered every single thing that he's done in there. So you're right, Jim. For all we know, he probably doesn't know everything that's in there, but there's definitely embarrassing things in there about him. Um, the other thing is, right, this is the crazy bit. Let's say that once the Epstein files get released, let's just say they do get released, and we find nothing incriminating in terms of there were girls who directly accused him of, yeah. Let's just say that the files get released and and there is no accusations of him being with underage girls. Accusations, but with adults, not underage girls. Let's say there's nothing pedophilic about Trump in the files. Let's just say that, right? And let's just say that it's all to do with him having embarrassing sex with adults or whatever it is, right? Threesomes, foursomes, whatever it is. Maybe he had a gay thing. I don't know. It could be anything, right? Let's say that's it. And that he's covering up for other people, right? Trump is acting in the worst way possible to make himself look like he's guilty, right? I don't think you could act any other way to seem like you're very guilty about this, right? And if I was like, if I was, anybody else around here, even if you thought, okay, I believe he's done a lot of bad stuff, but I don't believe he's done stuff with underage girls, why wouldn't you try to convince him to release the files? Hi, Sandra. Good to see you. Why don't you try to get him to release the files and not look so guilty? It just doesn't make any sense, right? And I think Trump, thought to himself that that his base, right, his base are so sycophantic, and so cultish that all he had to do was, when they had those binders or those influencers and the binders and stuff. I have no doubt that Trump thought, all I'm going to do is I'm going to release a couple of things here and there, show the binders, and all his people would fall behind. I think that's what Trump thought was going to happen. I think Trump is shocked that the people who are following him, because up until then, and it's understandable why Trump would be shocked, because up until the Epstein files, if Trump said the election was stolen in 2020, they all went along with it, right? They all believed everything he said. Trump said they're eating cats and dogs, they all went along with it. Trump said that he was going to end wars in 24 hours, they all went along. So you can understand from Trump's point of view why he thought, well, you know what? I'll tell, I'll once I get elected, I'll just do some bullshit release of the files, and then my base will just go along with it. And I think he's genuinely shocked at how his base is not liking this. Now, I will say, hi Joe, glad I caught you. I spy a Santa and Christmas tree. Yeah, that's actually a real Santa. That's Australian Santa, and that's a Christmas tree, which is like it's like it's not even like a proper Christmas tree anymore, because we have like a 20-year-old son now, so there's no point getting like a proper Christmas tree, but it's like a gold one, but it's nice. We kind of like it. It's kind of cool, and it lights up at night as well. It lights up at night. Yeah. So yeah, and that yeah. Thanks for noticing. I put a lot of effort into making it on one side of my head and on the other side of my head, and I just thought it was being wasted. I thought nobody was noticing it. I went to all that trouble to make him on our eyesight, but thank you, Sandra. Thanks for noticing. Yeah. Thanks, Vaughn, for joining. Yeah, but yeah. So besides Christmas, balance. That's right. On his side. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I think, I think a lot of this stuff with thanks, Kimmy. I think a lot of this stuff, with Trump and all, and Epstein files, perfect, thanks, Car. And I think I'd like to see, I I can't believe, to even for me, who notices Trump a lot, how much, right? How much they basically believed so much. Hi, Joyce. Good to see you again. Thank you for joining. Um, how much the supporters believed everything he said. But on Epstein, this is the one thing where they're like, no, we need more evidence. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact of they always saw the Epstein files as the deep state. And so for Trump to be covering up for the deep state is a big thing for them, right? Because these people live for the deep state. It's all about the deep state, and they represented the deep state, Epstein files, and now it looks like Trump is covering up for the deep state. So for for a full-on Trump supporter, this is kind of like the worst thing he could do, right? They showed up at the convention for him last year, the full-on Trump supporters, remember? And they wore sanitary pads on the ears for him, right? They walk around with Trump shirts, Trump hats, Trump flags. They did all that for him. And a lot of the reasons they did it for him because they thought he was going to blow up the deep state. And instead, he gets into power and he doesn't do it. So I think they've lost a lot of momentum because of that. Um, but I will say, I don't think a lot of those people are going to become Democrats. They might not vote for Trump at the next election, but I don't think they're going to become Democrats. Um, but, and again, I think the fact that they've lost people like Joe Rogan and a lot of those people as well, I think that's a big deal, because a lot of those people, they created a lot of energy for Trump in 2024. They created a lot of that momentum for him, especially online, and that all that momentum that he had in 2024 is now gone, right? And Trump, I think what's underpinning all this is that Trump is a lame duck president. I don't think at all he's going to try and run in 2028. Um, I think other Republicans know he's not going to run in 2028. And this is a very different Donald Trump. For the first time, we're seeing a Donald Trump who is losing a lot of his power because in 2020, right, um, he lost the election against Biden, but he had that option to come back in 4 years' time, right? And a lot of people, and I have to say, the only thing I would say is in 2021, January 6th, when there was the riots and all that, a lot of people, even back then, that was the end of Trump. There's no way Trump is going to recover from January 6th, right? How wrong we were. So, um, but I think the difference this time is that Trump still was young enough, well, not really young enough, but maybe young enough to run again in 4 years. He's too old now. It's not even about, it's partly to do with the fact he can't run because of the Constitution, but I think it's more to do with the fact that he's too old. You know, you think about every time I see Trump now, he's like falling asleep. Um, Joy's totally disgusting. They would come into the store dressed in Trump clothing and crowing about his win. Now you don't see Trump clothing once in a while. With the coming with a 45, 47 hat a day. Yeah, exactly, Joyce. They've lost a lot of their momentum, a lot of that vibe that you felt in 2024. And I did feel it. I did feel like something was going on. Even though I wanted Kamala to win, I've got to be honest, there was part of me that was thinking it felt like the vibe was in his favor. To me, it felt like that, right? Um, and sometimes these days, having that momentum is better than polling to some degree because the polling was showing 50-50, right? But for me, I was like, he's getting a lot of people online. Then he had the assassination attempt helped him. It boosted him even further. Um, you know, there was so many things going for him that, yeah, it's not surprising he won in 2024. But now it's a very different Donald Trump. He looks much older. He doesn't look very healthy, and he's still got 3 years to go. So it's not, and apparently a lot of people who are in politics will say that campaigning is much harder than governing, right? So he's still got another 3 years to go before he's going to campaign. He would campaign for another election. And I don't think he wants to go for another campaign. I don't think he's got it in him. So I think Trump is out in 2028. I think everybody knows that. I think Tucker Carlson knows that. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene definitely knows that. I think other Republicans are realizing he's a lame duck president. He's losing his momentum. He's losing his the elections in New Jersey, New York, Virginia were another sign, right, that he's losing. Because the thing about those elections was not that Democrats won, what's how they won. They won about 10% of people who voted. So 10% of people who voted for Trump, sorry, um, 20, sorry about that. 10% of people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024 voted for uh, Democrats. So he brought 10% of people across. On top of that, independents. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Um, yeah. So what I was saying, yeah. So he's lost independents. He's lost Latinos. He's lost a lot of people in that group, and he needs Latinos and he needs independents. All the Latinos and independents have now come back to the Democrats. So that's a big, big problem for them. I don't think. I think they know that. They can see the writing on the wall. He's also lost a lot of young people as well. A lot of young people coming back to the Democrats. So they can see the writing on the wall. They know that Trump is he's not going to run again. So I think we're going to start seeing people creating their own lanes, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're no longer. I think the thing is they're no longer scared of Trump, right? They're not as scared as Trump as they used to be, and they're realizing that maybe tying yourself to Trump, especially on things like the Epstein files, or maybe on things like um, tariffs and cost of living might actually work against them when they run again in the midterms or in 2028. So they're starting to look at the future now, and they're seeing a future that tying yourself to Trump might actually not help them in the future. So that's the thing. Like, I think that's for that reason. I'm starting to see there's a yeah. I think even though I don't think MAGA is dead, I think MAGA is diminished, and I think we're seeing the end of Trump peak MAGA, and we're going to see other people like I think Tucker Carlson or Sandra. Trump is just a vehicle for the crazies in the administration to advance their agenda, but they don't understand nobody can fill the shoes of Trump. He's a cult personality. I think MAGA crumbles without Trump. Yeah, I agree, Sandra. I do. I think it'll be a different MAGA. What I do think will happen is that there is one person who I don't think is that could is a is different to Trump, but he does have some of the things that a lot of the Trump supporters love, and that's Tucker Carlson. Or yeah, so or Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're the two people who I think possibly could do well amongst the MAGA base. And I think because what they're doing is that they're not positioning themselves as anti-MAGA, they're positioning themselves as the true MAGA. That Trump went away from America first. Trump moved away from, keeping jobs. Nicole Tucker, Ademo Tucker, Carlson. Yes. Nicole, I, that is the funniest thing. Like this is the insanity, right, of the MAGA party. Some of the front runners, oh yuck, both. I hope you're wrong, Joe. Yeah, yeah. I hope I'm wrong too, but I think Tucker Carlson, the craziness on the right is just insane to me. Like the biggest personalities on the right, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Candace Owens, right? A lot of the and they're all nutters, right? Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who a lot of people I see, they go, "Oh, she started to sound." No, she still thinks January 6th was an inside job, right? She still thinks that the people on January 6th were patriots. This is not something that she's changed her mind on. She still says that she wants Fauci to be arrested, right? She wants Fauci to be arrested. She wants an investigation into the vaccines, even though Trump created the vaccines under his party. Um, so she still thinks Israel is behind everything, you know. So I think it's there is a lot of that stuff with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's yet yes, it's good to see she's so calculating, cannot be. Yeah, exactly. Marjorie Taylor Greene can see the writing on the wall, right? She was not going to be able to run again, against the Democrats. She was going to lose she was going to lose in the Senate. All right, and Trump knew she was going to lose. She knew she was going to lose, and so she got upset. And now she's thinking, I'm going to run in 2028, right? And I don't think she'll win, but she's trying to normalize herself because you can't win elections with the crazy stuff that she does unless you're Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump can win elections saying crazy stuff because he's Donald Trump. He's like one in a million. Marjorie Taylor Greene can't run as a mad conspiracy theorist because she's not Donald Trump. There's only one person who can do it. She's not that charismatic. She comes across more like that Facebook, that friend of yours that is on Facebook all the time, and then you haven't spoken to them for ages, but you were Facebook friends from years ago, and then suddenly she's like posting stuff about chemtrails and vaccines are causing autism and all these conspiracy stuff, and you're like, whoa, oh my god, I haven't seen her in years, and now that's who Marjorie Taylor Greene is for me. I have so many Marjorie Taylor Greene friends from the COVID days, from when I was on Facebook, and then during COVID, I had friends of mine. They're not really friends. They're not people I speak to, but they're people I knew from when I was young back in the 90s. And they were people who were into like alternative stuff, alternative like drugs and all that, medicine, all that stuff. And then during COVID, they just became these wild conspiracy theorists. And there were so many of them, like I couldn't believe it. And they were people who you probably would have said would have voted left wing or Greens even in Australia, right? And now they're saying nice things about Trump. That's who she is to me. She's just a crazy Facebook, you know, she's a crazy Gen X Facebook person. I'm Gen X, so I know a lot of Gen X people. I think Gen X, my generation, are the worst for conspiracy theories. I really do. I do, and I'm saying this as a Gen Xer. And I think people who grew up like me are in the worst. So I grew up inner city Sydney. I was very much into alternative music, right? I loved grunge music, alternative music. That was my scene in the 90s, right? So, and a lot of people who were in that scene, it's amazing so many people are so easily, yeah, and so many people in that scene in the 90s, we considered ourselves anti-establishment. We considered ourselves like, like cool. We had like, tattoos. We're watching grunge music, smoking pot, not me, other people were, and don't test me, and then other people, all this sort of stuff, and we were doing all this crazy stuff, and we hated the establishment. We didn't consider ourselves the establishment, and so this Gen X group that I grew up with, then when Trump came along, he was doing all this anti-vax stuff. He was and they were doing all this, and then the Democrats started sounding very establishment like. They started sounding like, the goody two shoes party, right? And suddenly Trump's talking about ivermectin, and he's talking about all these alternative drugs. And a lot of these people, they love that stuff. So I can see how this Gen X group that I grew up with, right, and that got sucked into the whole Trump world, the whole, anti-establishment world that they got sucked into. It's because I know a lot of these people, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of these people, right? she's one of those Gen Xers like that I grew up with, except I never bought into any of that stuff. I was never into like alternative music. I was into alternative music, but I was never into alternative medicine, right? Um, you know, so I know them too. It's crazy. Yes, and if anyone watches The Boys, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a firecracker, right? Yeah, I have to watch that. I haven't seen that, Nicole. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, she's definitely one of those Facebook people, and so I can't see someone like that, right, um, becoming president of the United States. I think she knows that, and I think that's why she's going on The View. She's going on CNN. She's going on all these anti MAGA places because she wants to reach across the aisle because she knows that she won't be able to win with just MAGA. She won't be able to win with MAGA. Also, MAGA is now not as big as it used to be. So for her to win an election, she's going to have to get votes from the left and from the right, and she's not going to just be able to win through MAGA. So she's now, I think she wants to rechange who she is into a more moderate person, less conspiratorial. She's trying to reinvent herself. Exactly. Yeah. But I'm just not buying it because it was only a couple of months ago. So this is true. Like only the same day that she was talking about healthcare. Like she was talking, it was about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and she was talking about how she was worried about the premium healthcare policies doubling. And there were people on the left going, "Oh my god, she's like kind of cool now. She's kind of like a lot of people were buying into it." The same day she said that, she was tweeting out that January 6 people, right, should be a full investigation into all the into all those people in January 6, and there should be, and the police involved should be arrested. And she also called them hostages, and she called them patriots. And so I'm just like, she's still that crazy person, Sandra. Marjorie Trader, Marjorie Brown. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, Sandra. I know. I've got to say that Trump, this is another reason why I think Trump is flailing. He's not the same Trump. Back in the day when Trump came out with a nickname, he was the thing that made it okay is confidence. He had real confidence, right? He'd go, Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Joe, this sort of thing. Sleepy Joe wasn't too bad. It kind of made sense. Although he's now definitely Sleepy Don. And then all these other ones that he talked about, right? And then but then when he tried to do Marjorie Taylor Greene the other day, he said Marjorie Taylor Brown. And then he has to explain it, right? Then he says, and then he puts in brackets because when green grass dies, it goes brown. Now, when you have to explain the nickname, you've lost the nickname. The nickname's not going to work. The reason his nicknames worked is because they were easy enough for a MAGA person with the education level of a Nat to understand. It was just easy to understand, right? But when he's got to try to explain his actual nickname and he's got brackets about how grass happens to grow, now you're talking science. You've just lost 90% of your base, right? Sorry, but you can't. He's not understanding his base anymore. The beauty about Trump and his base is that he knew his base, right, were poorly educated and he talked to them at their level, right? Now he's struggling, right? Now Laura Loomer, right? She came over the top of Trump, the hero that she is, the Rasputin of the MAGA world. She comes in and she sees that Trump is struggling, right? That she realized that nickname, that's not the Trump I know. And they're trying, and then so what she does is she changes it to Marjorie Traitor Green. Now that is better, right? I have to admit that is a better nickname for the Trump base to understand. Marjorie Traitor Green, right? Because she's a traitor to the party. It's easy enough for them to understand, and it's still, it's still MTG, that sort of thing. So and then so what does Trump do? Trump copies Laura Loomer's nickname, right? So that nickname did not come from Trump; it came from Laura Loomer. So he's losing it, right? When you need Laura Loomer to come up with nicknames on your behalf, it's time to move aside, right? It's time to move aside for someone younger who can come up with their own nicknames that don't need to be explained. And I think this is another sign of why I think Trump, he doesn't care. Is the old Trump of 2024, the beauty of Trump in 2024 was the way he could just give nicknames and, abuse people. I'm not saying it's good, but there was a certain thing to it, right? So I do think Laura Loser, that's a good one. Kimmy, I like that one. Laura Loser. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Laura Loomer is, the fight between Laura Loomer and MTG is just, for me, hilarious because, like, they're both crazy, right? It's like you're having two crazy people and they're both calling each other crazy. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling Laura Loomer a conspiracy theorist. Then Laura Loomer calls Marjorie Taylor Greene a conspiracy theorist. But they're both nutters, right? They're both crazy. And so it's like you're having a fight with two like weird people. Like it would be like, having a fight like two people who are like racist fighting each other about which one is more racist than the other person. They're just like, I don't get it. I don't get the attraction. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene probably gets most of the support on the left because she's kind of saying things we like better. But for me, I feel like there's not much difference between the two of them. Um, I don't see a lot of difference between. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is. I think you know what I'm going to go on a limb here. I actually think I prefer Laura Loomer. It's why I think it's the plastic surgery. You got to give it to someone who's like in their 20s or 30s to go to that much plastic surgery. It's kind of like what it's. I think the reason she got so much plastic surgery is in the Trump administration. There is a thing where a lot of the women who are older, right, they get a lot of surgery, right? It's a big thing, right? How many people in the Trump administration, like whether it's a Trump family member, as soon as they hit 50, they just go and get. So Laura Loomer, she was too young to jump into that sort of, plastic surgery, MAGA plastic surgery women's crowd. But she thought to herself that she wanted to ingratiate herself with a lot of the females in the Trump administration. And so she thought, even though I don't need any of this because I'm like too young, she went and did it anyway. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she never went to that. She never went to that. She never did that, right? So I feel like she went a little bit further than he did. Also, I think Laura Loomer is also, I don't know, she's more honest about her dishonesty. I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene is lying about who she is. And I don't like the fact that there are some people on the left who are falling for her. And well, at least with Laura Loomer, we know who she is. We know she's a grifter. We know she's like, a con artist. We know she's like, what all those things. There's nothing nice about her. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, yeah, she's getting some traction, and I don't, and I think she's just as bad, in my opinion, than Laura Loomer. And in some ways worse because when someone pretends to be something they're not, for me, that's kind of worse. Do you know what I mean? Than when someone is actually just being themselves. So, but yeah, again, it's like, and then you've got Tucker Carlson, right? And I think Tucker Carlson, for me, is the most likely candidate to win the 2024 primary. And even though, again, we talked about before, is this is someone who went on TV, who was interviewed by Megyn Kelly just a couple of weeks ago, and he said this like so normally, like it was just a normal conversation between, like it was like he was having a 60 minutes conversation with someone, right? And it was like he was talking about economics policies in Southeast Asia. But he wasn't talking about economic policies in Southeast Asia. Tucker was telling Megan about how he was attacked by demons in the middle of the night and not, and actual real demons. Like, and he ended up with like scratch marks all over his body, right? And so you've got probably the biggest name on the right in MAGA media talking about being attacked by demons, right? Like, and actually being like scratched by them. And Megan Kelly, like looking at him while he's saying this, like he's just normal. Like she's just like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, yeah. And she's not like in any way phased, but because in that world, that's a normal conversation. That is a normal conversation to have in that world, right? So the worlds of Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, it's all been normalized in that world. She's another horror show. Exactly. Yeah. It's all that stuff has now been normalized in the MAGA world. That it is almost. Trying to think the other day. I don't think there's anything that they could say that would be so crazy that their base would go, I'm a bit worried about that person's like mental, I'm a bit worried. I don't think there's anything they could say. The only thing that would make MAGA question Tucker Carlson or, Marjorie Taylor Greene's sanity is if they started talking about they like the vaccines. If they came out and said, you know what, I don't think the COVID vaccines are as bad as people make them out to be, that's when they'd start questioning their sanity, right? That's when they'd start going, yeah, there's something wrong with that. Did you hear her comment about Epstein not being a pet? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I did, Nicole. Yeah, that was weird. I think the MAGA people, the online MAGA people who are Trump defenders, they're going to rehabilitate Trump by rehabilitating um, Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein himself. So if you can make them out to be not as bad as what people think they are, then by default that makes Trump not to be as bad. Because really, all they want is they don't want Trump. They don't care about what Epstein has done with money. They don't care about what Epstein has done with women who are over 18, even if it's trafficking, right? Even if it's sexual assault. They don't want the scourge of pedophilia attached to it. That's the part where they have to get rid of it. They have to get rid of it from Epstein. And if you get rid of it from Epstein, you get rid of it from Trump, right? Because Trump has such a sketchy past that we already know he was found liable of sexual assault and they still voted for him. He still won the election. We know he's had like 20 accusations against him by women and he still won the election, right? So he's done we know he was with a porn star. These people get caring about owning the lips. Exactly, Sandra. Yeah. And he still won the election. So as long as there's no pedophilia by Trump, for them, that's a win. And I think that's what I think that's why Megyn Kelly is trying to make it out like Epstein wasn't a pedophile. He was into young women, but he wasn't a pedophile. He was into teenage girls like 15, 16. I mean, 15? 15? But yeah, and basically saying that, so if they can get away from Ghislaine Maxwell and Trump and them not being pedophiles, that automatically means that Trump is no longer a pedophile. It's insane, this thing. And again, it's all about optics for them. But even her, right? Even Megyn Kelly, when she was at Fox News, she was crazy there, right? But she was nothing like what she is now. This is like, Jim, that is a good point. They don't care about pedophilia. They care about the scourge of it hurting themselves. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we know that, Jim, because they were so concerned about pedophilia before the election, right? The whole Epstein thing was never about pedophilia, because if they cared about pedophilia, right, they would have cared about when the Catholic Church was done. Remember the Catholic Church and it was all these priests and stuff? Well, when that all stuff was happening, how many of these people were out there? Instead, they were saying things like, well, it was only a small group of people, bang, 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 it's only this and that, right? When it was, guys, drag show reading classes by people doing drag, there's no accusations. I think there might have been one or two out of like thousands. And they said, well, we can't have people in drag doing reading to kids because of pedophilia. And yet here we have, and yet again, Donald Trump, right? Then then we have all of MAGA, and it wasn't just Trump. It was Pam Bondi, it was Kash Patel, it was Dan Bongino. They were going on all these podcasts last year. They were lying. They went on the Joe Rogan podcast. Now think about this. Now it isn't a it isn't a way election interference. Doesn't mean I believe Trump won the election, but it is election interference in some way, right? That he's going on all these podcasts to say that they're going to release the files, and Joe Rogan has a massive audience, and Joe Rogan was obsessed with the Epstein files, and then you have all these Trump people going on there and saying we're going to release the files, and then all of these podcasters, they all endorse him partly because of that, and then they don't do it. Well, they convinced a lot of people to vote for Trump based on a lie, right? A pretty big lie. Now, remember, these are the same people who said that the 2020 election was stolen, not just because of the Dominion voting machines, but because the Hunter Biden story, right, was suspended for like 24 hours at Twitter at the time. And because they suspended that story just before the election, that's why Joe Biden won. That's complete nonsense. Joe Biden didn't win because some story came out, because some story wasn't shown before the election about Hunter Biden, but it just shows the hypocrisy of it, right? They lied to all these podcasters before the election. They convinced millions of people to vote for Trump based on the Epstein files, right? And so, even though it wasn't the first issue was inflation, immigration, all that stuff. I don't think it would have made the difference. I still think Trump would have won, but I think it still shows that that they basically coordinated a thing that they were going to come into power, and then they lied about it. And so I think that's a pretty big thing for MAGA. I think they're losing a lot of their enthusiasm about it. I think Tucker Carlson is the person who is going to is actually the smartest. I think JD Vance, if he wants to run in 2028, will have to start distancing himself from Trump soon. Otherwise, he's going to be the Trump candidate, and then Tucker Carlson is going to run as the outsider. And you don't want to be the insider in this day and age. Being the insider is the worst thing, especially if you're the insider like Trump, who was there during inflation, who didn't release the Epstein files, all this stuff. Tucker Carlson will run as the person who's the real MAGA candidate, the genuine one, right? Trump betrayed the MAGA movement, and Tucker Carlson will be the one who brings them back to genuine thing. That's what I believe how Tucker Carlson's going to run, and I do think I don't know how he will do because he does also have that craziness to him as well. He'd have to moderate a bit as well. He's also connected to Nick Fuentes and all those sort of people. But yeah, I think I do believe that there's going to be. I think you're on something. Yeah. So I just don't know. In terms of Tucker Carlson, I do think a lot of people think Trump is going to run again in 2028. I think that is almost he has the creepiest. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Yeah, he does. He does have a creepy look. I actually can't stand Tucker Carlson. I really, really can't stand him. And I actually don't. I just don't think Tucker will work. Yeah, I know what you mean, Sandra. I know what you mean, but I don't know. Yeah, I sort of agree with you but it depends on the thing with Tucker is that he can change, right? He can change a lot. If you look at Tucker Carlson 10 years ago, he's very different to how he is now, right? He was a neocon. He was like a full-blown neocon. Then he went to Fox News and he started becoming a bit more anti-establishment, but he wasn't full on. Then he went online and he became full-blown conspiracy theorist. And, the first person he interviews when he goes online is a guy called Larry, what's his name? Larry Elderman or something. I forgot his name. Anyway, he basically he was the last time anyone's ever heard of this guy was the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer did a story um, in the early, I think it was 2003. Oh no, it was 7 or 8 when just as Barack Obama was getting into power, and he said that he had sex with Barack Obama one night. He had like they had a gay one night gay relationship. Now he has no evidence that this is true. The guy was convicted of fraud, right? And nobody took him seriously except for the National Enquirer. But the first person Trump interviews when he gets his online show is this person to talk about Barack Obama, right? His one night stand with Barack Obama. The transcripts are taken from the Dominion Case show. Yeah, exactly, Nicole. And that's the other thing because we know that the Dominion lawsuit, when Trump was still working at Fox News, is that the private messages showed that he was saying one thing publicly and completely different privately. So even though I think Tucker Carlson now wouldn't work, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a different Tucker Carlson as time goes by. And this day and age, if you change, like if you become a different person, you get away with it, right? You get away with it these days. You don't people. Hi Donna, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. You can get away with a lot of that stuff these days. You can have 10 different personalities, and people don't care. Trump will say one thing one day. Trump will be for tariffs. Trump will say the tariffs are really good for bringing down prices. And then now he's saying, I'm going to get rid of some tariffs to bring down prices, like, the opposite. And a lot, they're all shapeshifters. Yeah, exactly, Nicole. And, so I think Tucker could change his personality again. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is already doing that now because she's sitting in the right. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to come across as like the consensus person. They all, there's too much hate in politics at the moment. We all got to love each other. I think that's who she's going to be. There's been, and then she's going to go. I was one of those people, but then I saw the wrongs of what I was doing, and now I'm a completely different person. I'm all about the love, and I think that's who she's going to come across as kind of like the hippie, alternative Gen Xer. Uh, but I don't think she's going to get rid of a lot of the conspiracy stuff because a lot of her base like that about her. So yeah, so I think a lot of that stuff. So, but anyway, we'll wait and see what happens. Um, I just don't know. Yeah, I think Tucker Carlson's going to be the one. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with the Epstein files. I think it's going to get killed at the Senate. That's my prediction. And if it doesn't get killed at the Senate, then Trump will probably just veto it because he has veto powers. Um, one more thing before I go, I have to go soon. Thank you everyone for coming. Is I saw a really good poll for us, and that is that Latinos and independents have completely gone away from the MAGA movement, and they've come back to the Democratic Party. So they are in big trouble. You have to give it to Marjorie. She's a big, yeah, 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 exactly, yeah. But I think the problem with Marjorie is that even the people on the left who go, oh, she's not, I don't think we would vote for her. You know what I mean? We wouldn't vote for her, but we would just go, well, she's less, we like her a little bit better than the other crazy people, but we're not going to vote for her. So for her to win, she's got to win people's votes. She just can't have people on the left going, I think she's a little bit less nutty. You know what I mean? And at the moment, I think that's all she has is people saying, I think she's a little bit, I think she's a bit better than some of the other ones. And that's not enough to win your election, right? So especially when you have when you have a Democratic candidate who doesn't have her past, who I'm assuming that's who'll be running. But yeah, so it's really good news that the Latinos and independents have come back to the Democrats. So, I think obviously the Latinos has a lot to do with like ICE, but I think also the fact that prices haven't come down. Independents have come back all the way, which is great. Jumping ship because she's a lame suck. Yeah, exactly. Hi, T. Thanks for joining. Unfortunately, I do have to go now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I really appreciated that. I had a lot of fun. Um, and I'll see you guys again probably in another couple of days, 3 or 4 days. Thank you for joining. If you haven't subscribed to me, subscribe. And when I drop the video, it'd be great if you could restack it or pass it on to someone else. That'd be great. Sorry, T, but I'll thanks, Sandra. I'll post the video so you can watch it later. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Donna. Sorry about Donna. Started a bit later. Thank you. See you guys.